Moscow, 2016. The son of a Russian oil billionaire gets married, and the rumored price tag hits $1 billion. Guests fly in on private jets from 6 continents. Jennifer Lopez performs. So does Sting. So does Enrique Iglesias. 3 headline acts booked for one night nobody will remember by Tuesday. This is the ceiling. Keep it in your head, because we're about to measure the floor. Somewhere under that spectacle is a receipt, and one line on it is the dress. Reportedly $26,000. So dense with hand-sewn beading, it weighed 28 pounds. That's not a gown anymore. That's dead weight. Literally strapped to a woman's body for 6 hours. Worn once. Photographed 1,000 times. Then boxed. The beading isn't for comfort. It's for witnesses. Now cut hard, away from the billionaire's son to the actual middle of the market. Same era. The average American wedding lands somewhere between $29,000 and $33,000. That's not oligarch money, but it's still a full house down payment, spent in a single afternoon, on flowers that die within a week, and a cake nobody remembers eating. Here's the number that should stop you. According to Lending Tree data reported by Business Insider, 28% of American couples go into debt specifically to pay for their own wedding, not the honeymoon, not the house after. The wedding itself, one day, financed like a car, sometimes financed worse than a car, because nobody underwrites a ceremony the way a bank underwrites an engine. Zoom out past the US, and it gets worse. In Peru and in Brazil, surveys put the number at 47% of couples going into debt for their wedding, nearly 1 in 2. Different currencies, different courts, different marriage laws entirely. Same result. Which should tell you something. This pattern isn't a quirk of American culture. It's something closer to a design. So drop the individual failure story. This isn't 28% of people making a bad personal choice in isolation for no reason. It's a system, vendors, marketing, tradition, social pressure, engineered across decades to land almost every couple in roughly the same financial hole, on schedule, like clockwork. Systems don't produce identical outcomes in different countries by accident. They produce them by design. Let's name it so we can track it for the rest of this video. Call it the aisle tax, the toll charged on top of a piece of paper your local courthouse will hand you, legally binding, for the cost of a parking ticket. The aisle tax is everything stacked on top of that, invisible at first, itemized only in hindsight, and almost never optional once the process starts. Here's the exact gap we're measuring. A legal marriage, the version that actually changes your tax filing, your inheritance rights, your hospital visitation status, costs between $35 and $100 in license fees depending on the county. A real wedding, the version everyone actually pays for, averages over $30,000. Same legal outcome. 300 times difference in price. So where does that 300 times markup actually come from? Not from one villain, one vendor, one bad decision. It comes from 5 levels stacked on top of each other, each one invisible until you're already inside it and paying for it. Vendor markup, social comparison, reciprocity, financing, opportunity cost. We're taking them one at a time, starting from the ground floor. Before we get to those 5 levels, reset the clock. For almost all of human history, a wedding wasn't the emotional third act finale of a love story. It was a business transaction between 2 families, negotiated like a merger, with terms, assets, and obligations attached. Love, if it showed up at all, was a nice bonus, never the point of the contract. The mechanism was explicit: dowry or bride price. The bride's family paid the groom's family, or the reverse, depending on the culture. A literal transfer of money, land, or livestock to seal the deal. The couple's feelings sat somewhere below the ledger. What mattered was whether the assets balanced, whether the alliance held, and whether both families came out of it richer or at least even. Scale that against poverty data. As recently as 200 years ago, roughly 90% of humanity lived in what we'd now call extreme poverty. Subsistence farming, no surplus, nothing to spend on ceremony. A lavish wedding wasn't a milestone every couple aimed for. It was a luxury reserved almost entirely for royalty and the merchant class, because everyone else simply had nothing to spend. Then, one single decision flips the entire template. In 1840, Queen Victoria marries Prince Albert in a white gown, not for purity symbolism, mostly to show off British lace. Before that day, brides wore black, brown, blue, whatever color they already owned. There was no white white dress tradition to break. Victoria isn't following a rule, she's about to accidentally invent one. Word spreads, newspapers cover the wedding, engravings circulate, other brides copy it, and within a generation the white dress hardens into tradition, a script now 180 years old that most people assume stretches back to antiquity. It doesn't. It's one woman's fabric choice, amplified by visibility, until visibility itself did the one thing marketing can never fake. It manufactured obligation. Before World War II, roughly 1 in 10 engagement rings carried a diamond. Most people used other stones, family heirlooms, or nothing at all. Then in 1947, a mining cartel called De Beers hired an ad agency and produced 4 words: "A diamond is forever." It wasn't a discovery, it was a manufactured tradition, engineered to sell rock that has almost no industrial use. The campaign worked better than anyone could have predicted. Today, somewhere between 80 and 85% of US engagement rings contain a diamond, averaging $5,500 to $6,000. And here's the part nobody mentions at the jewelry counter. Resale value on that stone is close to zero. You're not buying an asset, you're buying a symbol, priced like an investment. This brings us to level 1 of the Isla tax. The markup you never see. Same vendor, same product, same labor, same ingredients, same square footage. The only variable that changes is one sentence. The moment you say the word wedding out loud, the price on the exact same item doubles. Not because the cost changed, because you did. The mechanic behind it is called price discrimination, charging different customers different amounts for the same good, based not on cost but on what they're willing to pay. Florists, caterers, venues, they've all been caught doing it. Journalists have called the same business twice, once for a birthday party, once for a wedding. Same order. Wedding quote came back 30 to 50% higher. Why does this work so cleanly? Because wedding demand is inelastic. You have one fixed date. You can't reschedule around a better quote. You can't walk away and come back next month when prices drop. Zero leverage, zero elasticity, and any first-year economics student can tell you what happens to price when the buyer has no alternative. It rises until you stop them. Case in point, the wedding cake. Same flour, same butter, same sugar, same labor hours as a sheet cake you'd order for a 40th birthday party. But call it a wedding cake, ask for tears and white fondant, and the price doesn't reflect the extra frosting, it reflects the extra zero. You're not paying for cake, you're paying a presentation tax on the word. Then there's the venue trap. Book the room, and many venues hand you an approved vendor list. Sometimes mandatory, sometimes just heavily incentivized. Suddenly you can't call around for a better caterer or a cheaper florist. The market you thought you were shopping in never existed. You picked a room, and the room picked your prices for everything else. So here's level 1 in full. You were never paying for cake or flowers or a room. You were paying for one word: wedding, staple to all three, silently multiplying every invoice by a factor no accountant would ever approve. Strip the word away and the exact same event costs a fraction. The product never changed, the label did. Level 2, the comparison engine. In 1954, psychologist Leon Festinger published Social Comparison Theory, the idea that humans don't measure self-worth against some fixed standard. We measure it against each other. Not am I doing well, but am I doing better than her, than him, than the couple 2 years ahead of us. Every ranking is relative. Weddings just make the ranking public, and weddings are almost engineered for that comparison. They're public, they're dated, everyone can pinpoint exactly when yours happened relative to theirs. They're photographed, tagged, archived forever.
The one hero in an entire lifetime to social graph is that friend of the checks, it just was all at once, same. In 1899, economists first and federally coined the term conspicuous position. Some goods, he argued, aren't bought despite expensive. They're bought because they are necessary. Veblen was writing about leisure class furniture. He could have been writing about centerpiece. That's exactly how the value functions. The value was never really the flowers themselves. The value is that every guest in that room can be brought man in your head and knows exactly what's going to be displayed in public. Everyone present is silent. Reading. Now run the reality check. Before the internet, before reading it the same time, you only ever saw the value to the person's opinions. That's a painful lesson. Everyone was writing about leisure class furniture. He could have been writing about cost and design. That's exactly all of it. A few dozen words and cost and meanings. This is why it's exactly all of it. As a veteran who's an influence and an influence, all the sales, all the events, and revenues, and influence, all the sectors, and has an influence, and it's exactly what he was. It's that everyone is scientific, but bad, before the internet of this time, you only ever saw the very few personal events. Maybe 30, 40 crossing very large strikes was mentioned, but don't these strikes. That's very important. That's the spread of progress. It Instagram creates new bank. Instagram reads and Instagram reads and the reads on the Instagram. That was later only the same. Only the same. Understood. Now, wait, only what's right.
The comparison engine that once ran on 30 data points now runs on an infinite, algorithmically refreshed stream, updated daily and never ever full. Here's the mechanism, and it runs quietly. Every perfect wedding you scroll past, the drone shot, the 10-course tasting menu, the fireworks over the vineyard, doesn't just entertain you, it recalibrates you. Your brain updates its baseline for what a normal wedding is supposed to cost, without asking permission. Do that enough times, and $12,000 starts to feel modest. $35,000 starts to feel responsible. That recalibrated baseline sets up level 3, the reciprocity ledger. A wedding isn't a private purchase between two people. It's a distributed bill, quietly mailed out to everyone standing in the room. The couple picks the venue, the couple picks the date, the couple picks the dress code. Everyone else gets an invoice disguised as an invitation. And social pressure makes sure it gets paid. Bankrate has actually priced that invoice. Once you count the gift, the flight, the hotel room, and the outfit you'll wear exactly once, the average American wedding guest spends somewhere between $600 and $730 attending a single event. That's not a rounding error. That's a car payment, a month of rent in some cities, gone just to attend someone else's Saturday afternoon. Now multiply that across a guest list. A 150-person wedding, at even the low end of that range, quietly extracts close to 6 figures, nearly $100,000 out of other people's bank accounts. No single invoice shows that number. It's never totaled, never itemized, never seen in one place. It's just 150 separate financial decisions, each one small enough to feel optional and large enough to matter. Then there's the bridal party tax, and it's steeper. Bridesmaids and groomsmen routinely spend $1,200 to $1,800 or more. Dresses they didn't choose, suits rented for one night, bachelorette weekends, engagement gifts, shower contributions. None of it optional in practice. Say no to the dress code and you're suddenly the friend who couldn't be there for them. The ledger enforces itself. Watch the paperwork if you want to see the system's fingerprints. Save the dates. Then invitations. Then RSVP cards mailed back separately. 3 rounds of printing, postage, and design for information that could fit in one text message. That redundancy isn't sentiment. It's an industry engineered to manufacture extra print runs, extra card stock, extra cost at every single stage it can touch. So level 3 closes on this. The couple's $30,000 balance is only the visible layer. Underneath it sits an entire friend group, a dozen, sometimes 50 people, quietly financing the same single event through flights, gifts, and rented tuxedos nobody remembers a year later. The debt has one name on it. The bill never did. Which brings us to level 4, the financing layer. Because here's the arithmetic problem nobody says out loud. The average wedding costs $30,000 or more, and the average couple does not have $30,000 sitting around. The industry noticed that gap decades ago and built a product to sit inside it, ready-made, branded, and marketed directly at the exact moment you're most emotionally invested in saying yes. That product has a name now: the wedding loan. Fintech lenders, the SoFis, the upstarts, the Prospers of the world market personal loans explicitly labeled wedding loans, often at interest rates between 10 and 30% APR. Not a mortgage, not a car loan, not tuition. Debt custom built, packaged, and advertised for the sole purpose of financing a single calendar day. But loans aren't even the main mechanism. A large share of that 28% debt figure never took out anything labeled a loan at all. They just put the caterer on a card they already had, then the florist, then the band, then the open bar, and watched the balance climb one swipe at a time until the wedding was over and the number wasn't. The industry's confidence in this system shows up in a strange place: wedding insurance. It exists now specifically to protect against the financial risk of the event itself, vendor no-shows, and extreme weather, postponement costs. That's so predictable, so structurally built into the process that it has earned its own actuarial category. Insurers don't underwrite risks that aren't real. Run the actual math on that financing. A $10,000 wedding loan at 20% APR over 3 years costs roughly $3,300 in interest alone, on top of the $10,000 principal. That's a second gift, one nobody toasts to, paid quietly, in monthly installments, straight to a bank that had nothing to do with the wedding itself. Level 4 closes on the real distinction. You don't spend that money once, you rent it. And rent doesn't stop when the reception ends, when the flowers die, when the photos get uploaded. It keeps charging you month after month for an evening that was over in 6 hours. One of the most expensive things you will ever keep paying for after it no longer exists. So here's the test. If you've ever defended a purchase by saying it's just one day, stop. That sentence isn't comforting you. It's doing the industry's math for it, converting a 5-figure decision into something too small to question. If you want more of this, systems, not vibes, subscribe. That's the whole ask. Level 5, the compounding cost. This one never trends because it's not about what leaves your account. It's about where that money was headed before the wedding intercepted it. Every dollar spent at 26 has a shadow version of itself, still working, still compounding decades out. The aisle tax doesn't just take money, it takes time, and no vendor refunds that. Run the number. Half the US average, $14,500, invested in the S&P 500 at its historical 10% annual return, left alone for 30 years, becomes roughly $253,000. Not through some genius pick, not through timing the market, just compounding, doing what compounding does when nobody touches it. That's the number sitting inside a single wedding invoice, disguised as flowers and a 4-course dinner. That isn't a side hustle. It isn't a stock pick, a crypto bet, or a hustle culture grind. It's simply not spending on one day, once, sometime in your 20s or 30s. No risk, no skill required, no market timing. The single highest leverage financial decision available to most couples is the one nobody frames as a decision at all. The choice to just not throw the party. Netflix's Marriage or Mortgage 2021 makes this literal instead of theoretical. Couples sit across from a wedding planner and a mortgage broker and are forced to choose the same dollars, split between two futures. One buys a single Saturday of catering and string lights. The other buys equity, walls, a front door with their name attached to the deed. Same number on both sides of the table. And every couple on that show reveals the same unspoken truth, whether they say it out loud or not. A mortgage is a wedding that keeps paying you back. One depreciates the moment the reception ends. The other appreciates while you sleep. Same ceremony of commitment, same 6-figure price tag in some cities, but only one of them is still working for you 10 years later. Now twist the frame. In 2014, Emory University researchers Andrew Francis and Hugo Mialon studied thousands of married couples and found something uncomfortable. Those who spent $20,000 or more on their wedding had a meaningfully higher divorce rate than couples who spent between $5,000 and $10,000. More money at the altar didn't buy a more stable marriage. In their data, it tracked with a shakier one. Same study, different line item. Men who spent between $2,000 and $4,000 on the engagement ring alone showed a higher divorce hazard than men who spent $500 to $2,000. Not zero. A modest ring wasn't the problem. The pattern was that spend tracked with risk, not with durability. The diamond doesn't measure commitment. In this data, oversized spend just measured itself. Here's the finding. Almost nobody quotes. Higher guest counts correlated with lower divorce rates, not lower spend. More people in the room. 150 witnesses predicted a longer marriage better than a $30,000 photographer did. Community, not cost, was the actual signal. The people who showed up mattered more than the flowers they stood next to. Correlation isn't the finale here. It's the tell. Financial stress is consistently named among the top reasons couples give when a marriage ends. Right up there with infidelity and communication. A loan taken out for one day in your 20s doesn't disappear after the honeymoon. It shows up in year 1, year 3. Every statement. Wedding debt can be a marriage's very first recurring fight. Pull back the antagonism for a second. No vendor here is a villain, and no couple is a victim. A florist charging triple for the word wedding isn't running a scam. They're pricing to what the market has already proven it will pay. And the market, uncomfortably, is us. Every overspent wedding, photographed and posted, is the training data for the next one's price tag. None of this erases the real parts. Family pressure is real. Cultural and religious tradition is real. Wanting one genuinely beautiful day with the people you love is real, and it should stay real. The ISIL tax was never a reason for shame. It's a reason to actually read the invoice before you sign it, line by line, instead of just the total at the bottom. So resolve the metaphor. The ISIL tax was never charged by one villain in a boardroom somewhere. It's charged by every scroll through someone else's reception. Everyone does it. Every vendor line item that mysteriously costs more the second you say the word wedding out loud instead of party. It's distributed, invisible, and collected by all of us, together, one comparison at a time. So somewhere right now, there's a video of $1 billion wedding. Real or rumored, doesn't matter. The myth does the same work either way. And somewhere else there's a couple, quietly $14,500 richer, 30 years from now $253,000 richer, for the simple act of not competing with it. No sign-off tonight, just one question: of those two lines, which one are you already standing in?